Good evening, afternoon, night, morning, whatever you find a way to watch or listen to this podcast. It is me, Omar Rashan Borja, the Burger Popper. And due to some unforeseen circumstances, we got an audio only episode today. But I have a new guest on the podcast, someone that we've been talking a little bit on Twitter, a fellow Service Academy football fan, and a fellow college football fan in general. I'm joined by Nathan Dailey. Nathan, how's everything going? And can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, it's going great, Omar. And I just wanted to say, man, thank you for having me on the podcast. This is my first time doing this, so it's really cool, and appreciate you giving me the time and the opportunity. And
Yeah,
yeah, like Omar said, I'm Nathan Daly. So
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess, you just let us know, like, aside from being a Navy fan, just the other interest in the sport of college football, in pro football as well.
yeah, uh, so so you're asking me like what their teams are like?
Yeah, teams, interests in general in college football, and yeah, in pro football.
So I guess for you know what teams I like, I mean for the I'm an NFL fan too. I'm a big LA Rams fan. So I've been a Rams fan since I was a kid. I'm the weird guy. I'm from Wisconsin, and I get crap all the time. Like, I'll talk like football and something. They'll be like, "We should be." They're thinking, you're a Packers fan." I'm like, "No, I'm actually a Rams fan." I'm like, "Huh?" I just get to, that weird look on people's face and explain it to them, and I'm like, I tell them when I was a kid, my first team I played, I was called the Rams. I just decided that day I'm gonna be a Rams fan. I've been a fan since. I went through all the bad years in St. Louis when they had Steven Jackson there winning like one or two games and stuff. So I'm a diehard. And as far as college football, Navy's my first love. You know, it's kind of funny because definitely not the norm. I didn't go to the academy or anything like that, but a lot of it, I used to never really share it much because I always thought it was weird if I'm being real with you. Because I'm like, most of our fans of Alabama, Auburn, Georgia, USC, Ohio State, whatever. And I just always had this secret love. I felt like as a kid for the academies. And I always loved military history growing up. And I always thought I was going to serve or, always kind of dreamed of just life happened, things that really work out for me. But I just grew to love academy football. I think it just, to me, it truly represents what football is. It's brotherhood, it's toughness, it's blue collar tough. The guys that truly play for the love of the game, that always was a draw to me. I've had the opportunity to actually go to both academies. I've been to West Point and I've been to Naval Academy. I tell people all the time they're two of the most incredible campuses you ever step on. I mean, you can just feel the tradition, the excellence when you walk on those campuses. And I'll never forget. I was in the Naval Academy. My father, a couple of years ago, like, yeah, I'm gonna go to school here, and he's like, well, Nate, you gotta get good grades, and well, never made it in. So yeah, and then I also, I like watching the Wisconsin Badgers. Born and raised Wisconsin kid. I like I did pull for Ohio State a little bit. Actually, a fun fact, I had a cousin that was a wrestler at Ohio State, so I pulled for the Buckeyes a little bit. I don't know. I feel like for the most part, and like as far as college football goes, I feel like I have more of a draw for the G5. I don't know why that is. I like a lot of those programs, and I probably follow more G5 football than I do. I should say Power Four football now because Pac-12 went not existing on us. So, but yeah, that's I guess kind of sums up my you know college football and NFL fandom. So
Yeah, that's great, honestly. And yeah, like, it's interesting. A lot of people think that a lot of people have connections in general with the military academies or with the military in rooting for Army and Navy, but it's just great to see people with no connection, but just loving the style of play, loving the sort of the makeup and yeah, just the makeup and the history and tradition of these institutions in general, and that leading to their fandom. That's just great to see. And as an Army fan, like, it's honestly humbling, really, that just seeing firsthand the impact the academies have on football fans and everything. But you hit the nail on the head about everything about some of the things that make the academies great. That's not all, of course. There's a lot of things that make the academies great. But yeah, I mean, I've been an Army fan since I was six. Was it six? Yeah, 2005. And both my parents served. Well, both my parents enlisted and served. My dad retired and everything, and then I grew up thinking that the Army football team, or that the Army Black Knights were the Army's football team, and not, and I had no, uh, I guess, no concept of what West Point was. So yeah, like I mean, I ended up going there as those who watch this channel may know. I don't mention it much unless it comes up in conversation. Um, but yeah, I ended up going there, and I'm currently in the military right now. But yeah, like my Army fandom has not died in that moment. But yeah, and then yeah, like you guys know the rest. But yeah, like the academies are great for college football. I really hope that they maintain an important place in college football, which we'll talk about a little bit later on with a lot of the trends happening in college football, which like who would ever thought about like private equity and the splitting of divisions being a thing, but it's a very realistic possibility. But before we go to more grimmer topics, Nathan, what are some of your favorite moments as a Navy fan throughout your life that you can remember?
So, when I think of my, being a fan of Navy football, I became a fan actually right around the over at Navy. Actually, it's kind of funny. This was like middle school, and I watched like an Air Force game, and they beat the Air Force for the Canadian Chiefs trophy forever. Being a Navy fan, and I think part of it too was like always had a fascination with the Marine Corps, and Academy trained Marines, so that was part of it too. But yeah, as far as moments, like I'd say recently some of my favorite moments. 2015, I love that 2015 team with Keenan Reynolds. That team was awesome. I mean, that was one of my favorite teams to watch. Just they were really cool. I mean, I remember watching an interview online with Justin Fuente, the former Memphis coach at that time. And I remember him even saying in an interview, he's like, "This team is more athletic than people." I mean, I think they were a very underrated team. I'm not saying they would have won the national title or anything like that. They would might be that good, but there's a lot of teams in the country, even in the Power Five, that they probably could have either given a game to. So, and Keenan was just awesome. And another favorite moment of mine was definitely 2019. I actually got to go to a game that year too. I actually went to the Notre Dame game in South Bend, which was not much of a game. I mean, they threw the ball like 6, 7 times and got destroyed, but it was just cool to be at a game. I've always, another team I've always kind of had a fascination with Notre Dame. I love the history and tradition. Rudy's one of my all-time favorite, sports movies or movies in general. And it was just cool. Like, I've been to a lot of different college football stadiums, and Notre Dame's one of my favorites. Not just not because it probably had the most electric crowd, but just the tradition. It's like growing up in Wisconsin, you go to Lambeau Field. It's like that. You feel the tradition, the excellence. There's all the different statues around the stadium. Campus is beautiful, but it was cool too just to be there because it was two top 25 teams. And that was the first time I think they said since 1983. So it was really cool to be there for that. And have two top 25 teams going at it. That was a great season. I mean, 11 wins, beat Kansas State in the Liberty Bowl, which, I was excited for, but at the same time, I mean, with how much college has changed over the last handful of years, you know, I, the bowl games are just, they've lost some of their nostalgia, so I think that game different and would have meant a lot more, but it was still cool. It was still a great season, and Malcolm was fun to watch. That kid was one of the most electric players I've watched that maybe ever. So
Yeah, no, those are definitely great moments. I mean, the 2015 team as well. Like for me, my stance, which is kind of controversial for Army fans, is like I like rooting for the academies when they're not playing Army. Like because if Army ends up beating an undefeated Air Force team, like they did this past year, which is honestly one of my favorite moments. I'll talk about later. I'll talk about later. But if they end up beating an undefeated Air Force team, that's good for college football. If Army and Navy are ranked and Army ends up beating a ranked Navy team, that's good for college football, right? That's good for the academy standing college football. Shows that they're nationally relevant when the academies are good because when and I'm sure you can attest to this, when Navy was in the middle of its streak, they just kept beating Army, and they're beating some bad Army teams, and that really didn't prove much about the level of academy football, really. So that's my stance. I liked watching the 2015 team. I liked watching Keenan Reynolds, except when he played Army. That man provided many of my worst moments as an Army fan. But Malcolm Perry as well. Malcolm Perry, geez, I had a front row seat to him running all over Army for 3 years. Um, it was horrible. It was very horrible, especially 2017 game, 2017 and 2019 game when I think he ran for like a combined like 585 yards or something like that, over 580 yards in games against Army. Like it was absolutely crazy. But I kind of wish he got more out of his NFL career. But at least he played and got some carries. That's something very few academy grads can say they've gotten out of an NFL career. So I guess I have to say some of my favorite moments as an Army fan. I guess I'll give one moment from early on in my fandom as a kid that I remember fondly. I'm gonna have to say in 2008 when Colin Mooney ran for over 200 yards against Eastern Michigan. Colin Mooney was probably like my first favorite Army Black Knights player that I can remember. Great fullback for Army back in '08, and Army won the game without completing a pass, which at the time was a foreign concept to me because I had really no I didn't really know what the triple option was about then. I just knew that Navy ran the ball a lot in that formation. Army started using it in 2008, and the rest is history from there. I'd say recently my favorite moments. I'll just rattle them off in quick fashion with Army. Army coming from behind and scoring with 1 second left against Temple to send the game to overtime, then beating Temple in 2017, beating Daniel Jones at Mikey Stadium in 2017 as well, shutting down the future number 6 draft pick. And then on top of that as well, I'd have to say going to the 2020 Liberty Bowl because unlike you, like I still think the bowls have meaning. I still think they have great meaning. Like, yes, the trends in college football kind of point to it being focused on the playoff, but when a team like Army gets to go, even if it was during the pandemic, even if there was an outside reason why they went to the Liberty Bowl, when a team like Army gets to cap the season in the Liberty Bowl, that was like a dream come true. Like I remember sitting at the dinner table with my mom when it was like December 20th when they said that Tennessee couldn't play in the Liberty Bowl because of COVID, and I told my mom, I'm like, if Army plays in this, like I got to do this because like they'll never play in the Liberty Bowl again. And here they are. Even though they lost, it was just great to see Army play in a bowl of that stature, that history, and everything, and play in a bowl that I kind of equal it to a team like Indiana or yeah, a team like Indiana or Minnesota going to the Rose Bowl, like the Rose Bowl game, which of course will be playing in the Rose Bowl during the regular season from now on. But I kind of likened it to that. So those are some of my favorite memories. I guess in short, I can give you a million memories as an Army fan. Oh, and then of course 2023 Army Air Force beating the first ranked team since the Nixon administration. It was great. But yeah,
Yeah, those are good memories. I actually remember that Liberty Bowl game a couple years ago. It was a fun game to watch, and yeah, I'll never forget. Man, just the I obviously should be in the Independence Bowl and that whole thing collapsed and should have been a controversy. And I'm thinking, man, there's one team you got to let in a bowl game. It's the Academy team, and there's teams that have like 3, 4 wins that year going to bowl games. I'm like, man, this team had a winning record bowl game, and I'm glad that it all worked out. Some of it fell through because nobody wanted to play them. Is teams hate playing the triple option, which I love the triple option, so
yeah,
I it's like weird for that. And I'm like,
it's not weird at
that's
all.
one of the reasons. What's that?
I said it's not weird at all.
Something like I remember one time I was watching Navy game with my father, and he's like, "All they do is run." I'm like, "Yeah, that's kind of the point, Dad." It was the boringest thing in the world. I'm like, I love it. So to me, that's football, man.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the triple option is great. I'm glad that Army's switching back to it. The shotgun scheme wasn't bad, but you can tell there was some growing pains there, which I'm kind of on the fence about. I kind of wish that they would have stayed with it, and actually like rode it through one full recruiting cycle. But the Coastal Carolina game changed everything for them to run the way that they did against Coastal Carolina, and it showed that it worked. And then I don't blame them for wanting to switch. I just wish they went through one recruiting cycle, which Navy is also undergoing sort of an offensive change with I think it's Drew Cronick, the coach of Mercer, who actually coached against Army at Mercer. I was at that game in the weird pandemic season. It was one of three FCS teams Army played at Mikey Stadium that year, and yeah, Mercer ended up losing that game 49-3 to Army. Excuse me. But yeah, like I guess what are your thoughts on the new Navy scheme? I think they had the pieces for it. Like Teska's he's a great back. He's explosive. Dabo Fofana, I believe he comes back too, and he's also a great back that is great inside the tackles, has great explosiveness up the middle. But yeah, what are your thoughts on the scheme?
You know, when I here, it seemed like a good hire. I mean, the guy is, Drew Crowder, from what I read on his resume, reading up on him in an article, he has won a lot of different places. He's what it sounds like won a lot of places that are not easy to win. Yeah, the opponents are obviously not easy to win. You think a certain way. You were Christian like a kid, and you got that understanding with that. But I, you know, I've always kind of wondered, can the academies win without doing an option-based offense? And we really haven't seen it a lot. I mean, even Army last year, I thought they did okay, and I agree with you. I would like to see an Army try to stick with it because I saw some moments, and I think Bryson Dailey, quarterback, from the game that I watched, did a pretty solid job overall. But they go, taking, go to the nice time. I guess we haven't really seen it because I feel like one of the offenses we're really seeing the academies doing well, and it is the triple option. So it's gonna be interesting, man. In my opinion, maybe I don't think they've been as bad as their record has shown over the last couple of years because I think the biggest issue, and it's no disrespect to like Ty Levitine, these guys have had the last few years, but um, they just don't think they've had quarterback play. I mean, I remember even watching the Memphis game last year, and they were playing toe to toe with them for a while. Almost had a chance to win, and a lot of it came out of QB play. So, I mean, the defense has been phenomenal. I mean, Brian Newberry, man, he is a phenomenal defensive mind. I mean, I'm thinking we're able to keep him as long as we have, and then make him a head coach. But I guess we'll see what happens. I'm trying to be open minded about it. I mean, I want to see Navy get back to playing winning football, but it's going to be interesting. I think there's pieces for it, and I think at the end of the day, as an academy team, you have to be a run heavy team. We don't have the athletes to be throwing around the football like crazy, like, USC or some of these other teams. I mean, I still think that as an academy, you got to play a certain style of football. Do I still think you could run a different offense? I think you could, but I guess we'll wait and see. So,
Yeah, I do agree. I mean, and I think Lavatai and Arline had their moments. I actually met Xavier Arline at the airport on the way back from Dublin at from last year's Notre Dame Navy game. It was just interesting. I told him that that I'm an Army fan, that I'm an Army grad, and that yeah, like I just kind of wish Army did cool things like that. So that was an interesting experience. But yeah, like I mean, I'm excited to the young stable quarterbacks that they have and Braxton Woodson and the names had Blake Horvath. Yeah, the name was escaped me. I think they do bring some excitement and speed. Something more that that Xavier Arline brought to the table. The only question is like passers, and really, I don't think last year's scheme used the personnel all that well. I mean. Anton Hall gave us headaches in the 2022 Army Navy game, and he barely carried the ball all year. Same thing with Dabo Fofana. Dabo Fofana had great moments, especially in 2022, especially against Notre Dame, but he wasn't used as much, which is it's kind of sad. And especially like don't even get me started about the slot backs that weren't even used that well. The slot backs. So aside from Eli Heidenreich, but the other slot backs that they had weren't really used all that much. So excuse me. So yeah, that's just my thoughts. I mean, we'll see with the scheme this year, but Navy's defense was amazing at times. It's just sad that the offense couldn't really keep up sometimes. Like, because Navy had three shutouts last year. Like, people forget like that they shut out three teams, which is absolutely wild.
yeah, no, well, here's it was. I want to say Charlotte was one. What was it?
It was.
It's a really low scoring game. Forget the just you know, one of them died. Yeah, you're right. The defense is just awesome. That's absolutely clear. A few years ago, 2 years ago, and that dude was just a stud line. Probably, you know, I played in the Polish line. I mean, he should have played on the SEC. I still saying he didn't get drafted. But I think this heard he's playing for the Canadian League now.
I
So,
think so. I think I heard that too.
yeah, I mean, even for you guys, man, Army, I mean, I'm just amazed. Like, every year, you guys have somebody signing, signing the consistency. I
Yeah.
mean, this is, you guys too, man. I'm really impressed. I love Coach Monken. I think he's a really underrated football coach. I'm just impressed with how you guys, run run the program. This is the develop players, but every year they got guys going to national camps. I mean, to me, that says a lot.
Yeah, exactly. It really does. I mean, even if they don't make the team, like the camps, all-star games, like we had two guys last year. We had one guy playing the Gridiron Showcase, which it's not exactly an all-star game, but they do a lot of live reps. I think it was Leo Lowen who played in the Gridiron Showcase, and then Army sent a defensive back to the Tropical Bowl, the All Star game at the Citrus Bowl, which I 100% would have gone to see an Army player at the historic Citrus Bowl, but I was doing a field exercise that day, so that's something that just makes me sad to think of. If I'm being
Yeah.
honest. But yeah, so like just All Star Game too. And then I remember a couple years ago when I was stationed in Georgia and I did go to the Tropical Bowl. There was a Naval Academy cornerback that was in that game, which was cool to see. It was cool to see a Navy player play in a stadium with such a great reputation in college football, such as the Citrus Bowl. So yeah, All Star games can and pro camps just definitely two ways that Army and Navy make their marks in the professional and college football world. So going on to our last topic. So it's a very tumultuous time in college football, in college athletics in general. It seems like every single day there's new development that's like makes you think, wow, that's depressing. This week, it was naming rights for conferences, but in the past there has been a rumor, excuse me, a I guess blueprint for the splitting of the FBS, the Football Bowl subdivision. Through it all, Nathan, where do you think Service Academy football stands in college football's future?
You know, they've been thinking about that a lot for the past like year, couple of years, just with everything going on. And I guess, well, to me, it's kind of a wait and see. Do I still think it can be? I mean, I look at what Air Force has done the last couple seasons, especially last year. I mean, that Air Force team, I mean, heck, they would have won undefeated, which I was not usually an Air Force fan, but was kind of pulling for them too. Because, like, man, it'd be so cool to see a Service Academy make it New Year's Six or make a major bowl. It just bring a spotlight to the academies. And, you know, I feel like, I guess a part of me still feels like they can be, but, at the same time, I kind of wonder, I'm like, will the academies will they evolve? Like, will they, maybe embrace some of this NIL? Because I know right now academy athletes cannot money or anything like that. And I feel like to a point, I mean, they probably need to embrace this. And, I mean, kind of hoping they do to an extent. But, it might look differently than maybe like your traditional colleges. But I don't know. I just feel like for them to compete, they might have to, evolve some of their way they do things. But, yeah, I don't know. I guess it's just wait and see. Part of me thinks they can, and part of me thinks they might not. I don't know. Or do they drop? I've always wondered, are they going to drop out? Because I just feel like right now, I mean, there's talking of G5, P5 split, and you know, kind of traditionalists like kind of like you, Omar. I'm not a big fan of all these conferences breaking up. I mean, it's really sad to see the Pac-12 just disappear like it did, all that history and tradition. And it's just crazy where college football's heading. I mean, I guess I'm not shocked by it. It was a matter of time, I guess. But yeah, You know, I don't know. It's you know, I think if they, if the G5 does split, I don't blame them. Because I think even bowl games now, I think, you know, back in the day, it used to be a big deal to go to a bowl game. I mean, and now it's kind of whatever. And I'm just kind of like, well, if my team can't, be as that matters anymore, because I mean, the chances of maybe an Army making a national championship in this landscape, I'll be sort of slim. If it happens, it'll be amazing. But I just don't know what happened. But part of me is just kind of like, hey, if the I hate to say it because I would like to see it play 4 or 5 teams. Like I would hate to lose like that Notre Dame game. That's awesome every year for the for Navy. But no, it's G5 split, so I'm thinking, hey, maybe you guys can make it to the playoffs. So
Yeah, I mean, my thing is excuse me, sorry. My thing is I think the Group of Five playoff is bad for college football because if you think about all the great moments that involved Group of Five teams playing um, Power Five teams in bowl games, like the 2006 Fiesta Bowl, I guess in the New Year's Bowls, like that's what makes college football great. No one's gonna pay for a 12 team playoff for the 12 seed is like NC State playing, the 5 seed being a Ohio State team that didn't win their conference championship. Like that's not a great story at the end of the day, should NC State beat Ohio State. Which is why I think a Group 5 playoff is bad because that would ultimately be the end state for the playoff. And it'll be the same with the Group of Five. Group of Five teams playing each other, and it's like I'm not saying the Group of Five football is bad, but it's like upsets are ingrained in college football, so what makes it great. So that's just my thoughts too. As for Power Five games, like Power Five games are cool. They are. The Oklahoma game was cool. The Michigan game and everything. Those are great games for Army, but I mean, I'm not as like when we win those games, it's great. It really is. But I'm not like even if we don't play those games, like I'm not like well, I wouldn't be too angry really because unless it's like a school, I like the rivalries or not rivalries, but series we have with schools that are like us academically, like a Duke, a Wake Forest, who else? A Boston College, schools like that with similar academic standing. So I'm more into those schools, which is why with college football, I guess what I would love to see Army and Navy be. I would love to see if the ACC were to sort of not dissolve but lose, have a mass exodus after Florida State ends up leaving and figures out the lawsuit and whatnot. After that happens, I would love to see Army be in a conference in the ACC with Duke, with Wake Forest, with Syracuse, with Boston College, with Pitt, like a sort of Northeast slash academic conference with Navy as well. I would love to see that for the academies. I feel like Army has to wait and see with realignment, like they did with the American, which is great that they're in the American because there are a lot of quality programs. We have a former Southwest Conference member that were conference members with Army and Navy. We have Memphis, who's been phenomenal in the Group of Five since the playoff era. You have a former Big East member in USF in the American. It's a great home to be, but I would love to see us be ultimately end up in the ACC or another thing too, or in a rebuilt Pac-12 because the Pac-12 values academics. I mean, who's more academic than the service academies? Get Army and Navy. You got Washington State, Oregon State. You got two former Pac-12 programs, and they fill it up with say a Tulane with maybe Rice or and a couple of other good schools. I would love to see that for Army, but that's where I see. I think it's tumultuous. It really is, and I'm really hoping that they don't split and make a separate playoff or subdivision because that takes away some of the greatness of college football, of the football bowl subdivision. But you know, we'll see. We just got to control what we can control. There's nothing else we can really do, honestly.
yeah, no, I agree, Omar, and I agree too. I would see that thing because I mean, I look at it as a kid. I mean, Michigan losing to App State, how crazy that was. That's what makes college football special is those David and Goliath matchups. Watching Boise State beat Oklahoma or watching Navy beat Notre Dame or, the Navy beating Houston. I mean, that's another great moment too. The 2016 Navy Houston game when we beat Houston when they're number 6 in the country. So that's another great moment. I forgot about that one. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's that. I feel the same way, man. But it's so hard to tell where things are going with the sport right now. Kind of sad to see some of the stuff. Some of the stuff I'm not against, but it's definitely losing some of its nostalgia that I think we grew up with. Just and that's kind of sad to see. And I don't disagree with you either, man. I would love to see. I like a lot of those like matchups too. Even like cause how maybe they used to play Wake Forest back in the day. When they're independent. We've been BC a few times. I agree. I'd love to see a regional conference with just a lot of the Eastern schools. I mean, your Syracuse's, your Boston Colleges, Army Navy in the conference. I mean, I mean, they're just West Virginia, just true Eastern schools all in a conference. But I don't know if it'll ever happen. Maybe it will, but who knows?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I agree. I mean, that I don't want things to fall apart, and but I feel like we're on the verge of it. But I think Army and Navy can still benefit in the end, like we say, an Eastern conference, which is ultimately the dream. Like college football lost out with the loss of the Big East, really. And it's really sad. So maybe or like not exactly return of the Big East, but a return to that principle through the ACC and whatnot.
Yeah. Well, that'd be that too. I think that'd be really cool. Yeah. It's just like I said too. It's kind of sad to see some of the traditional some of these traditional matchups being lost too. I mean, I don't even think was it last year or this year? You guys are just playing Dartmouth, which is just like it's like just like a real Blake
Yes, it
legacy
was.
game.
It
And then
was. Yep.
I don't know if it's an Ivy League and most people aren't going to care, but I'm like, man, I love those kind of matchups. Like those are like it's traditional, but it just yeah, maybe in the natural landscape of college football, it doesn't mean much, but it's just the story behind it. That's what makes it fun. It's just sad to see a game like that go away.
Yeah.
And I'm truthfully, man, I miss being an independent. I mean, the Americans been a great league, really good football, especially in the early years of it. I mean, when like Houston, Cincinnati, all those guys were in the league, it was a lot of fun to watch. But I still miss being an independent. I love the variety of the schedules, the different Power Five teams that we play every year. I mean, 1 year we played South Carolina, State, obviously Notre Dame every year. I mean, it was just I like the variety.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something that Army fans are saying because they love the Power Five games. But I think Army fans need to realize, or Army fans that don't like the American move, they need to realize that years like this past year when we played three Power Five teams, those are an anomaly. Though that's not commonplace. Like, or they're like more often we will as an independent, we would have had years where we only have one Power Five game, like in 2019. Like people forget that the Michigan game was our Power Five game. So that's just my thoughts. I totally agree. I mean, with the schedule variety, but we just have to make oranges out of, or I guess we have to make lemonade out of lemons.
Yeah,
If it's even that, honestly. And there's some cool destinations. Like the thing about the American, a market focused conference is there are some good cities that Army fans can travel to. I mean, and there's Army fans in all pockets of the country. Like Memphis, that should be a fun trip. Playing at a historical stadium, playing the Memphis Tigers at a historical stadium. Boca Raton for Florida Atlantic. That's another fun trip. New Orleans for Tulane. And Tulane Army and Navy, those are historic series for those schools as well. And then you name it, San Antonio, seeing Army or Navy play at the Alamo Dome is great. You got, USF with Tampa at Raymond James Stadium for now, the home of the Buccaneers. So, I mean, you just gotta take what college football world's giving you, just be optimistic about it. That's just how I see it.
yeah, no, absolutely. And you're not wrong, man. Things will change, and people gotta adapt and stuff. But I get, I think one thing I do appreciate about your podcast, especially, man, is that you embrace tradition, you honor it, and I think it's cool too that you're not just talking like Power Five football or Power Four, whatever I want to call it now. You talk about everybody, man. I mean, I hear you talk about FCS and the academies, and like if you come from D2, D3 football, I think that's really cool because there's a lot of great football throughout the country that people forget about, and I think that it's cool that you're willing to embrace it. And I think there's a lot more people too than what the media wants to share that are kind of sad to see where things are going. With college football, and I think a lot of fans, it's you know, like I talk to people all the time. I think that they're sad to see where it's going to a point, but I guess they just kind of deal with it. So
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I appreciate the kind words, really. I just do it because I love the game, and there's great college football all around. And you can love all levels of college football and bring attention to it without making jokes about it. That's just always my view. Really, I mean that's kind of been the trend. You make jokes about levels of college football and it brings attention to it, but it's not doing it the right way. Um,
yeah,
So
yeah, I say, man. I mean, but since we're following you on Twitter, I mean, I see you're a fan of like FCS teams. I'm like, man, I've never met a guy that's like a true. You're like a Holy Cross fan and stuff from
yes, I grew up
so
10 minutes away from Holy Cross for 10 years of my childhood.
yeah, no, I think that's cool. Really respect that. I gotta say too, man. I remember. Are you going to the Notre Dame Army game this year?
I am. That is the plan. Hopefully, lets the army do something with me. But
No, that's awesome, dude. That's when they announced that matchup. I mean, that's another matchup right there. I mean, great story game with a lot of history and tradition behind it, especially back in the '40s. That's the other thing I tell people too. These academy teams, like if you look at the history of them, they're as good as any in college football. I mean, maybe they've had Heisman Trophy winners with Joe Bellino, Roger Staubach, you know, in numerous bowl games, things like that. Same with Army. I mean, Army was a powerhouse back in like the '40s and '50s. I mean, they were kind of like the Georgias of today. I mean, they were a really good team. Earl Blake is one of the greatest coaches of all time. I just think, same with Air Force. I mean, Air Force is a great football tradition. I mean, Fisher to Berry
yeah,
is one of the greatest coaches of all time.
yeah,
A lot of winning teams. And I know back in the '80s or '70s, they came close to competing for the national championship. So it's just these schools have the history and tradition. It's just people forget about it. There's a lot of schools like that too. So
yeah, exactly. Definitely. Be just got to go out and look for it, especially with the service academies. But Nathan, is there anything final you'd like to add before we sign off?
is there anything I would like to add to yes?
Add to the to the podcast before we sign off.
Um, I guess I got one other question for you, Omar.
Yeah.
How many different stadiums have you been to?
Oh man, I haven't counted. I would say I don't think it's that high to be honest. I think it's probably like about 20 or so, 20 or 30 or so. But I mostly like neutral site games.
Yeah, I actually do the same thing a lot. I go to a lot of different stadiums. I've been to multiple different NFL stadiums, been to multiple college stadiums. I've been to a lot of big ones. I've been to Georgia, I've been to Auburn. Auburn is one of my favorites. I mean, I tell people all the time, man. Whole down south is a whole different animal. It
Oh yeah.
really is. The stadium was electric. Auburn got killed that day. He wasn't too happy. He was a big Auburn fan, but it was just cool, man. It's just down south, man. They know how to do football. It was just really cool. I was gonna say too, man. You should make a trip to Wisconsin sometime. Like take you to Camp Randall. It'd be fun for you to check out. So
Yeah, I know Army played at Camp Randall a couple years ago. I mean,
yeah.
I wasn't too interested in that one, honestly. Not because of Camp Randall, just because it's like Army was having at the time they're like I think they lost two in a row, and it was just like it was a
Mhm.
weird matchup. Like just hearing Army play Wisconsin, it was a weird matchup for sure. But yeah, no, I mean
Mhm.
I would love it.
Yeah, Mark. Like I said, love your show, man. Love what you're doing. It's really cool that you want to bring me on here because I don't do a podcast. I don't know what you're doing, so who knows? Maybe after this, Joe Rogan and Jocko Willman could have me on their podcast.
Yeah, no, the pleasure is definitely mine. Thank you again, Nathan, for joining, and for everyone listening, slash watching the YouTube feed, or also listening because it's audio only, the YouTube feed. Peace, love, and soul, and I am the Burger Popper. Bye.